Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This week, the Home Secretary of the UK, Priti Patel, put the Muslim community on notice. If the government decides that you are undesirable, your citizenship can be revoked and you can be deported to a land that your grandfather came from. It's these ground realities, quote unquote, that some popular Muslim speakers refer to when they appeal to the Muslims to be pragmatic. So are these populist Muslim speakers playing into the hands of the government to forcibly assimilate Muslims into Western communities? Let's take a look. So what did Priti Patel actually say? In short, she can revoke the citizenship of a British citizen and have them deported even without them being notified. Many Muslims will take this as coded language to mean don't rock the boat, don't criticize our values, don't criticize our culture, and don't promote your values in our society. Rather, you need to adopt our values. And inadvertently, the popular Muslim speakers become echo chambers because of threats like this from the government, appealing to the Muslims to be pragmatic.
But you also campaign against homophobia and in favour of LGBT rights. Do you see that as all part of the same struggle?
Absolutely, and I will say this about American Muslims. There has not been any coordinated campaign oppositional to the Supreme Court decision for same-sex marriage. This is a civil rights issue. We have no place as American Muslims targeted in the United States of America to oppose another marginalized group in this country, which includes LGBTQ communities.
I support the notion that the American government is not in charge of morality. Okay,
so you're not opposed to same-sex marriage?
Politically, yes, but morally, I don't agree with this. So there's a distinction.
But as a law of the land, you're not campaigning to change the law or opposing it?
I'm not.
So in response to such challenges, popular Muslim speakers urge the Muslims to ally themselves with LGBT groups, with left-wing socialist groups, and other similar types of causes to become more acceptable. And they will even go to the extent to say that if you don't like it, then leave and go somewhere else which you find more suitable. Interestingly, non-Muslims who criticize capitalism, who fight for animal rights, and they may even be violent, they are not threatened with having their citizenship revoked, and they are not threatened with deportation. So is pragmatism an option for Muslims? So let it be said that pragmatism is not wrong in every case. It does have a place. And the people who call for pragmatism, they're not necessarily bad people or evil or want harm to come to the Muslim community or Islam. Rather, they are doing what they think is right. However, politics is not their field of expertise, and hence they make mistakes when they speak about this. Why did the Prophet ﷺ, and in fact the many prophets before him, why were they not pragmatic when so much harm and difficulties came their way because of the way they spoke and because of what they spoke about? For example, Lut alayhi salam was an immigrant in the land that he worked in, and he was threatened by the people. If you persist in criticizing us, we will expel you, we will kick you out, we will revoke your citizenship. And they said, unless you refrain, O Lut, you will be expelled. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was criticizing idols. His father threatened to stone him, and eventually he was cast into a blazing fire, and he was a young man, if not just a child. So did they not have cause to be pragmatic and avoid this kind of harm? The Quraysh respected the Prophet ﷺ, and this is well known. However, when he started to call for Islam, he was faced with slander, persecution, and the believers faced sadistic torture, and even some were killed. In fact, it led to the Muslims being boycotted from Mecca. For 3 years they were homeless, and some of them had to chew on leaves in order to survive. So if anybody had a case to be pragmatic, if anybody had a reason to be pragmatic, we find that Lut alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam had plenty reason to be pragmatic, yet they were not. So why is it when they faced so much difficulties, they didn't become pragmatic and they didn't take the approach that we are told to take? And we know from Islamic sciences that when the Prophet ﷺ persists in doing an action again and again and it results in harm, it is a qarina, an indication that it is an obligation. In other words, they were obliged to be outspoken and they were obliged to speak on the issues that they spoke about. Therefore, being pragmatic was not an option for the Muslims. Now, indeed, there are some nuances. And there are questions about the Muslims going to Abyssinia and the fact that the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a private stage in his da'wah. This I will address in later videos, but I hope the main point of pragmatism is clear in your minds on why the Muslims behaved in the way that they did. But pragmatism in the political sphere has not resulted in any gains for the Muslims. It has led down a path of enforced assimilation, where even Islamic schools talk about LGBT issues, where the virtues or the supposed virtues of democracy and monarchy and British values are preached in Muslim schools. We even find Muslim community leaders and Muslim politicians being pro-Zionists in the name of pragmatism. But with all this pragmatism and all this compromise for the sake of being accepted and for the sake of obtaining some legitimacy, it has done nothing to stop discrimination. In fact, abuse and discrimination of Muslims has passed the quote-unquote the dinner table test. So never before were laws passed targeting Muslims. So now on top of the prevent legislation, on top of that now we have threats of having our citizenship revoked and being deported to a country that some of us may never have been to. This life is meant to be a struggle. It's not meant to be easy. This life is given to us so that we may work and that we may earn the everlasting life that is to come. The struggle to establish Islam and to convey the light that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent to all the people of all the lands, that struggle is what preoccupied the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. We cannot expect to be in the same ummah if we don't take the same struggle and the same preoccupation with establishing Islam and conveying the light of Islam to the four corners of the world. Being pragmatic in matters that we were not allowed to be pragmatic, it is that which has led us to where we are today, where we are worse off than we were ever in the West. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين.